All right, welcome everyone to our third and final session for our workshop, Confidence and Curiosity, Girls at the Telescope. I'm Anna Hurst, and Vivian White and I from the Astronomical Society of the Pacific are here to facilitate the workshop, filling in for Teresa Summer, who's our astronomy educator and diversity coordinator, who sadly can't be here. And we're also joined this week again by Jessica Hendricks from the Girl Scouts of Northern California. So we're happy to have her with us again. This week, we're going to be rounding out your toolbox for girl-friendly outreach. We did some of the, we've given you some tools in the last two sessions and in our forum discussions, and we're going to just be adding some more tools to that toolbox today, and also learning more about the Girl Scout badges. So here's an overview of what we have planned for tonight. We're going to see how it went with your interviews. A few of you posted in the forum just today and shared your experiences. And then we're going to go, like I said, we're going to share some tools with you, asking questions, and also addressing misconceptions. So I'll go over those. And then we'll turn it over to Jessica to tell you more about the space science badges that the Girl Scouts released recently, and that ASP was a partner on helping to create and also offering these workshops as part of that project. And then Vivian will share some hands-on activities, and we'll talk about the idea of making one change. That's what we want you to commit to going out of this workshop. So just a quick overview of what we have planned for tonight. And now we can dive into it. So first off, I want to hear how it went. Did you interview a woman, and what did you learn? We asked you to pick a woman in your life and ask her about her experiences with science, whether she is in a science field or not. Does anyone want to share what they learned from that experience? Was there anything that surprised you? Was there anything that was similar to experiences you've had or very different from experiences you've had? Anyone want to share?
I just want to say I loved all the stories you guys put into the forum. That was maybe my favorite part of this so far.
I know some of you posted in the forum, but if you did, you can also share it now.
Yeah.
You don't have to give the whole experience, but maybe just anything that was notable to you.
And if you want to unmute and say it here, you're welcome to do that, or you can put it in the chat.
So the first ones I saw come in, you were interviewing women who are working in science fields, which was really interesting, and you shared some of their motivation for getting into science, and some of the challenges they faced along the way. Michaela, thanks. So Michaela writes, I think what surprised me is that STEM extracurriculars are a newer idea, and that many women got their science experiences in school more than out of school, even though it might well be the other way around. That's really interesting, especially since we're partnering with the Girl Scouts on this project, right? So that's definitely out of school time, and they're trying to provide really good STEM experiences for the girls that, depending on where they go to school, they might not be getting in school, right? Our friends from Connecticut note that there are very different experiences depending on what generation you grew up in. And I think that's something that Michaela's thought is a specific example of that. Like, where are you getting access to science and technology? Is it through school? Is it because you go to the science museum a lot? Is it something you choose to do in your free time? Julia said, I love doing the interviews. The ladies seemed shocked that anyone would be interested. I didn't really include that in my notes when I posted. That's right, Julia. And you did more than one interview, I remember. Anyone else have an experience they want to share? Any of the guys?
I guess.
How was your experience interviewing a woman?
I'm a lousy typer, so I'll talk.
Okay, yeah, please go for it, Ernie. We love that.
Yeah, so I interviewed a person that I work with in astronomy outreach. I do astronomy outreach at Fossil Park, and the director of education is the person that I interviewed. And what struck me, she didn't have any particular strong feelings about ever like not feeling unwelcome or anything like that. But one thing, in the course of talking, she kind of came back and said, well, I just realized all my advisors throughout school just happened to be women. And in particular, she made a strong point about her PhD advisor being particularly influential and being a great example in her case, and what was important to her, of someone who was a scientist and hardworking and accomplished, but also had, a family. And so for her, it was quite, I guess, an impactful relationship. So I think we talked about last week examples, and just I think that's consistent with.
Yeah, that last week we talked about the importance of role models and also of sharing women's stories. So you're doing that now by sharing her story. Thank you, Ernie. Anyone else have anything they want to share?
Well, I got to interview my family because they're the women who are closest to me and I have most access to. I think what surprised me the most was my two daughters. In doing so, in their talking to me about their experiences, what they've had, because my wife is kind of in charge of homeschooling and taking care of them, is that they didn't have that negative experience, but they got some of that negativity from the curriculum that's required of them. And so giving them the ability to choose and to kind of pick their own path and then explore the things that they wanted to do were important. And I think that kind of links into what we're doing, having those young women do those things that they're really interested in. I find that when I do some outreach with our group, if I tell them, well, have you ever held a shooting star? And let them ask the questions and then kind of answer those questions and then hand them a meteorite and then kind of answer those questions and work together. It really benefited them. In turn, I can kind of see that light kind of turn on for them. And for me, reaching out to my girls and talking to them about it, it was kind of interesting to hear that concept without them having any of that prompting.
Great. Thank you, Dennis. And we're going to talk about asking questions during this session. So that was a nice foreshadowing to that. Great. Anyone else? You can also continue to post in the forum and share your stories there. It's a great place to have a lot more detail about what you learned in the interviews. And I encourage you to read what others are posting too, because there's some great stories there. Great, thanks. And I see again our friends from Connect New Haven posted some information. You saw a Pew survey of scientists. About 10% said that informal educational experiences inspired them to become scientists. That's great. So you could be providing that inspirational experience. Great. All right. So let's move on and get into some of our tools for your toolbox. So the first is just asking questions. And a lot of times we are listening for questions from our audience, right? Because if they ask us questions, that's a good indicator that they're interested and engaged, right? And so definitely keep listening for those questions. I think that is a good sign that you're sparking their interest. But you can also ask questions, and this is a great technique for engaging with your audience and also making them feel welcome and feel engaged. If you're, by asking girls or your audience, but we're talking about girls specifically in this workshop, by asking them questions, you can learn about their experiences, make a connection with them, and encourage them to engage more in the topic. So we're going to talk a little bit more about each of these types of questions you can ask. And I just want to encourage you, when you ask a question, to pause, and even if it feels a little awkward, to wait, because sometimes it takes a while for that question to sink in. They might be kind of feeling things out. They maybe don't know you yet, so they're like, why is this person asking me a question? But if you pause, and this is doing online learning and video conferencing is a good practice at this, because you have to just kind of sit there and wait. Someone might be typing something. Anyhow, remembering to pause maybe a little longer than feels comfortable after asking a question, and give the girls a chance to respond to you. So let's look at each of these in a little more detail. Oh, and great, Julia had a comment following up on that. I've noticed young women often pause before answering, so that's great advice. Don't step on their toes. And I'm the same. Like, I really like to think about things before I start talking. I remember for a while when I was younger feeling like I gotta hurry up and answer, but I'm not ready yet. So great. Yeah. Michaela has a nice comment as well. I love that you have your hands raised. Let's see how many of you can think of an answer, and then call on someone after everyone had a chance. Great. So giving them a time to think before you call on someone, just the one who always raises hands first. I love that, Michaela. That's really good. So asking questions can help you learn about their experience level. So you can ask, have you looked through a telescope before? And if that's a Girl Scout, you know, she might say, no, this is the first time I've ever looked through a telescope. And isn't that exciting? Now you know you're facilitating her first experience. Or she might say, well, I have 5 telescopes at home and I love astronomy already, you know, and then you're not making an assumption based on any kind of preconceived notions. Teresa likes to share a story at this point where she was at the NEAF conference, the Northeastern Astronomy Forum, and there were a line of people. It was a public event, public telescope viewing event that was part of the conference, and an amateur astronomer had a solar telescope set up with a line of people, and a man stepped up and looked through the eyepiece, and the astronomer was very excitedly telling him where to look for sunspots and talking about magnetic activity. And then he finished his viewing and stepped away. And next, a woman stepped up to the scope and looked through the eyepiece. And the astronomer said to her, well, you see that yellow ball in there? That's the sun. Now, that alone is, you know, noticing the difference between that man and that woman. It sounds a little maybe condescending, right? But also that woman was a solar physicist who had worked on the SOHO satellite. So you try not to make assumptions about anyone and just ask them a question instead to find out about their experience level. So this is a great one. Have you ever looked through a telescope before? You're not making any assumptions. You're just seeking information because you're interested. Anyone have any other questions they might ask about someone's experience that you like to ask when you're doing outreach or have your telescope set up for the public?
I love Don. He said he likes to watch their eyes and see what they're looking at, because what they look at is often what interests them.
That's great. I like that, Don. So noticing their body language, their line of sight, and then maybe you could ask a question about that thing. So if you notice them looking at a particular telescope or any props that you have, notice that and then ask them about that. Really nice. Michaela says she likes analogy questions. You want to tell us a little bit more about that, Michaela? It takes some time to type. While you're typing, I just see that the folks from New Haven asked, how do you see dim things? Or how can you see something that you can't see with your eye alone? Don, that's another good tip. Talk to their leader. So if it's like a Girl Scout troop who's there with a troop leader, it makes them feel like you are okay if the leader looks comfortable. That's a great tip. Thanks, Don. All right, let's move on to another question type. If you're still typing, Michaela, I'll still read what you've got there. Thank you so much. I know you have microphone issues sometimes. Here's another type of question where if you ask a question to try to make a connection with a girl, right? So you could ask, how long have you been a Girl Scout? If it's a Girl Scout troop, right? Because that's something about her. Have you seen the new space movie? So this is a generic space movie, but whatever space movie is out right now, you know, so there were some that came out around the moon landing anniversary, or a Star Wars movie, or some referencing some popular culture that she might be interested in. Do you have any other examples of questions that might help you just make a personal connection, even if it's not directly related to astronomy or content. What badge are you working on now? Carol, that's great. Yeah, I like that one. What would you like to know about? Anything interested you're knowing about? Great. Do you think you'll go to the moon? That's a fun one. Which telescope looks interesting to you? Let's go over to it, or let's look it over. Yeah. And Michaela, I see your response now. So for some hands-on activities, I'll try to think of a common experience that everyone, beginner through advanced, has likely experienced. Was there ever a time when you fill in the blank? Then bring it back to the topic. For observation, you might ask something like, did you ever look through binoculars backwards to call attention to how the lens work to magnify? That's good, because a lot of people have done that, right? I always do that with a pair of binoculars. I look at them backwards. Don says, I'll hold out a pair of binoculars. Chances are good that one girl will reach for them. That starts the conversation. Good. These are all great tips, Don. Thanks for sharing your experiences. All right, and then questions can also be a call to engagement. So do you want to take a look at Jupiter? Or what do you like best about the night sky? And I know this is subtle, right? But you are asking, so you're not assuming interest or lack of interest, right? You're letting them indicate it to you through your question. You're interested in knowing their interest level, rather than saying, look in that eyepiece, you'll see Jupiter. You know, you're formulating it out a question, and this can be subtle, but it can be more welcoming that way. Great, so all good questions to ask. Now, of course, you're going to hopefully, like I said, you're going to get some questions yourself. You're going to get them asking you questions, and this is a great indicator that they're interested and engaged. Sometimes you'll get a question and really there's an answer, right? It's not something that they'll be able to figure out themselves. It might be a factual question. How many moons does Jupiter have, right? But other types of questions are ones that you can, partner with the girls to answer their own questions, or to help lead them to answer, find an answer. They can make guesses, because again, going back to that growth mindset, mistakes help us learn, or have girls collaborate with each other, do like a think, pair, share. And then, and next we'll get to some like misconceptions, right? But what if they try to answer their own question and they get the wrong answer? Is there a way that you can respond without saying you're wrong? Anyone have any thoughts on any of this? Ways that you help them answer their own questions? Or a good way to respond to a wrong answer without just saying you're wrong? Carol says, that's a great guess. I used to think that too, but Michaela likes the part about encouraging guessing. Reminds me of those articles about how girls are far more likely to backspace all their work. I like to ask why they answered that way first. Scientists are asking that same question. That's a great way to respond. Yeah, and then relate it to some current research the Juno satellite just looked at. And that again is highlighting science as a process for seeking answers to questions. So again, recognizing sometimes there's just an answer to give, but sometimes you can help them think through and try to answer their own questions. Vivian, as we were going over these slides, Vivian pointed out a very common question that I think a lot of you probably get is, how far away is that? And I think that's an interesting one, because in that case, often people want to engage with you. They're not sure what to ask. So that's what they come up with. Do you all get that question a lot? How far away is that, whatever you're looking at through the telescope? And do you have any good responses other than just giving them the factual answer? Is there a way that you can give them the answer and then make it more engaging and more of a conversation. Look for a thread that can be directed into a different direction. Any suggestions? It's so far that I can't even count that high. That's a good one. And how might you then take that and turn it around and ask them a question that gets them more engaged? Maybe like, how long do you think it would take to drive there in a car? Or the light took X years to reach us. Good, those are all good responses. I guess what I'm going for there is, if you just give them the factual answer and don't take it further, then you're just kind of shutting it down there. But if you can recognize they asked that question not because they really care about how far away it is, but because they want to have a conversation with me, and try to then go back to those questioning techniques, ask something to make a connection with them or to find out more about their experience. Julia, that's a good one. What's the farthest you've been away from home and how long did it take? It's like X times as far as the answer you just gave me. I really like that one because it ties it back to their personal experiences in their lives. That's great, Julia. Thank you. Okay, so sometimes though, you probably get questions that you hear over and over again that at some point it's your pet peeve. Like, is Mars really going to be as big as the full moon? So let's talk a little bit about how to address misconceptions. And here, what's really important for not shutting people down, even if the question might be annoying, it's not because the person's trying to be annoying, right? And you want to have a connection with them. So not going right to that's wrong. Try to see what's right and give gentle corrections. So we kind of have a formula for that. Oh wait, first we have an example. So this probably happens to you a lot too, right? Someone looks to the telescope and says, I don't see anything, it's black. And this is a nice example of a script of a way to do this. So you could respond with, sounds like we need to troubleshoot this. Can I take a look? And then take a look in, and there's no problem. You see things fine, but you probably know what's going on and why she can't see it. So I'm able to see the stars, but from certain angles, I only see black too. Want to try again and move your eye around? So it's showing you like, oh, I get it. Like, you can do it. I know you can do it, but it's easy to get the angle wrong. Rather than just saying you're looking at the wrong spot. So that was a nice positive formulation instead. So what you want to do is restate what they said, say that's interesting, or people used to think that, or I used to think that, then correct, and then give a compliment or redirect to another interesting topic. That's kind of a nice simple formula to use rather than saying that's wrong. So here are some pretty common misconceptions in astronomy. I bet many of you hear many of these all the time. Why don't we pick one? Like, which one of these do you hear the most? Put the number in the chat of the ones that you hear a lot. And let's see if we can figure out together how to reformulate it. I'm seeing a lot of sixes. So number 6 is the North Star is the brightest star in the sky. So maybe you point out the North Star and they say, oh, that's not very bright. I thought the North Star was the brightest star in the sky. And you could just say, nope, it's not. It's not even close to the brightest. You're wrong. But what would be a better way? What if we wanted to go back to our formula? Anyone want to give it a shot? If I came up and like, I heard the North Star is the brightest star in the sky, how would you respond to me using this formula? Anyone want to take a stab at it? You can feel free to unmute and speak it out. Great. What else do you think it might, why else do you think it might be famous? It's not bright, just very important. It's serious. Show them another star and see which one they think is brighter. Yeah, I think those are all good. And if we wanted to have a statement in this, we might say, you know, a lot of people think that the North Star is the brightest. It's not the brightest. Like, look at that star over there. That's even brighter. But the North Star is very important. It's right above the North Pole, so the other stars seem to rotate around it while it stays fixed in the sky and shows us which way is north. And it's great that you have a lot of interest in the stars. Would you like me to show you some other stars? Or the North Star is at the end of the handle of the Little Dipper. Can I point that out to you? Something like that. So you're not shutting it down. It is really a common thing, right? And so you can grasp onto, well, it's an important star, even though it's not the brightest. I definitely hear that one a lot too. Any others that are like pet peeves? 8 and 9. 8, the Mars one, right? I said that one before. Yeah, any thoughts on how you might reformulate that one? I might say, I've been hearing that one for many years. A lot of people have heard through news stories that Mars is going to be as big as the full moon in the sky. But Mars, while it's bigger than our moon, is a lot farther away, so it looks a lot smaller. But at certain times, it's much brighter and better for observing. Like right now, it is at opposition, right? And why don't we take a look in the telescope? Yeah, it would do a lot of damage, wouldn't it? So again, just thinking, when you hear something that you know is wrong, pause for a moment and think about, how can I turn this into something positive? And just as a reminder, I know this was a slide that we had in the first session, but again, all of these tools that we're giving you, they're not just for girls. Like, we're focused on making it more welcoming for girls, but these are better communication techniques for everyone: girls, boys, adults, kids, men and women. This is just a better way to communicate with everybody. So don't feel like you have to make these adjustments just when you see a girl. You're gonna reach boys better this way as well. Yeah, it's kinder and more welcoming. And don't we want to welcome more people to this subject that we love so much and spread it around? And with that, I am now going to turn it over to Jessica to tell you more about the Girl Scout Space Science badges.
Hi, everyone. Thumbs up if you can hear me. Okay, great. Thank you. So we have 6 Girl Scout levels, and I'll go through each one. There are a lot of words on the screen. Most of the words are on the right side, and most of the pictures are on the left. So if you're moving chat windows around like I do, I'm just giving you the heads up. Daisies are our youngest Girl Scout. So Girl Scout starts at kindergarten, 1st grade. I am going to put at the end a link to our badge explorer that'll give you an overview of the steps. Daisy badges have 3 steps, 2 choices each. And here's some things you might want to do with the telescope. As the girls earn their Daisy Explorer badge, they're going to explore and observe like a scientist. So sun, moon, and stars, it's kind of the 3 areas of interest. Sun usually through shadows, but you may have, of course, safe solar viewing filters. Good opportunity to talk about safety in a way that is interesting and exciting, but not scary. We've definitely had some girls actually get a little almost nervous about looking through even safe solar filters at the sun. Yes, oh, and yeah, shadows change throughout the year. So we love like kidnoculars, those durable toy binoculars. So if you can bring them out and let them look through them, that's great. Being playful with your discoveries. Go ahead and ask, oh, where is the moon? And if it's not out, when did you see it last? And what did it look like? And where was it in the sky? And then if you're out while it's getting dark, realizing that a lot of times these girls have earlier bedtimes, who can spot the first star? And remember that oftentimes girls really like collaborative success rather than sort of individual winning competitive games. So even if one person spots the first star, maybe they'll be, oh, who can see the second one? And oh, continue along and realize that it's not so much about the individual as the group sort of succeeding together. It's very important keeping things short and active. I'm doing a terrible example by just shoving a whole bunch of information at you in this, but I just wanted to go through so many things. but make sure that you pause with all ages, and we were just talking about it, and let it be girl-led. Leave space because we're all so excited about all these things, leave space to have them ask questions, leave space and ask them questions. And if there are ways to let them get the wiggles out, that can be good. That can increase the amount of time they can spend there. That's probably true for both the younger girl levels. And then you want them to start identifying what they're doing as science. So, you know, scientists look through telescopes and look at things. So really kind of making it really clear, keeping your sentences simple, succinct. It may be not a complete concept. Remember, you're just introducing it. It's really hard. You're like, this isn't quite everything you need to know, but just keeping it simple and encouraging them to really enjoy discovering. Let's go ahead to Brownie, our next level. So the Brownie Adventurer Badge is definitely one of my favorites. This badge and all the other badges have 5 badge steps, each of which has 3 activity choices. There's some room to change around the activity choices if you're helping the girls complete their badge work. Most of the girls will be coming to you having done badge work. Well, it depends. If you're in a museum, they might be coming to complete their badge with you. But most of them will be coming as part of a star party, go see a telescope. So go ahead and ask their leaders or ask the girls, is there anything in particular you want to see or do tonight at the telescopes? Ask them what they already know if they've already started their badge work about the stars, planets, and moon. This is very much about sort of learning about moon phases, what the planets are and the order they are out from the sun, and constellations. Exploring together, sort of talk about how telescopes work. It's not necessarily part of the badge work, but you really do want to start looking at what is this thing that we're looking through and why are we using it? Getting creative, this is definitely a fun moment where the girls come up with amazing things. One of the badge steps is about constellation stories. So you can tell your own constellation story, or you can have them, it's a great, again, pause and shift from them looking through the telescopes when you kind of need a little break to look up, connect the dots, kind of like they might have done with clouds, and find their own constellation and then tell a story to a friend. And this works actually for all levels. It's a great opportunity for them to have a little bit of sort of quiet and then social time. You can do, if you're meeting them somewhere indoors, there's a few activities, of course, indoors or during the day, doing space-themed art. If you can bring a photo of a moon or a planet, giving them a chance to spend time with that image and really observe it and think about it, noticing the light and dark spaces, or what are some of those features on Jupiter, and telling them stories, either fact-based or fictional, sort of mythology narratives about planets or the moon. We have a great, we actually have been doing this where the Brownies in our Title I schools, we have staff going out to lead these badges, and we bring the ASP moon stories with us. They're short, from all different cultures, and as the girls are looking at a picture of the moon and drawing it, they're hearing about these stories from other cultures, and then they use a crayon on a drawing of a moon and create their own sort of woman in the moon. Usually we encourage them to think about an animal or an object. So they've kind of heard other stories also. Remembering that younger girls may be excited and maybe a little nervous about being in the dark, and sort of just making sure that they feel comfortable and safe where you're at. Next. Juniors is definitely getting deeper into the solar system, its scale and movement. So talking about the solar system, let's see. So juniors, I should mention, sorry, I've been having it at the top, but juniors are 4th and 5th graders. So that's about 9 to 11 years old. And this one, the focus on scale sizes, distances, movements. So you can talk about the solar system and planets, even if you can't see any planets. You can talk about us on Earth, day and night, some basic things, and then start talking about planets. They're learning about scale, size, and distance. This is definitely a good moment to talk about planets and how their distance is different than the distance of stars, and start talking about maybe even the stars and the exoplanets if they're interested in that kind of thing. One of the steps is to calculate their age on other planets, which is really fun. And we usually bring the period of revolution on a little worksheet. There's certainly apps for it, but you ask them which planet they want to be on, and most of them want to be on Mars because that makes them a teenager, because the period of revolution is about 1.88. So we bring calculators, and even if they don't understand decimals, they haven't done division, if they have fun with a calculator, and they love to see how many Martian years they are. So that can be a really fun little thing to do. Doing a star wheel is one of the steps. Really hard to understand sometimes how to use a star wheel or how to describe it. So this is a great chance, even if you don't make their star wheel there, which is one of the badge steps, showing them how to use a planisphere. How do you line it up? How do you orient yourself in the sky? How do you, what are the ways that you use it? And then a lot of times, this is a moment when they start to know about constellations. They start to hear about astrology and the zodiac. And so you can take special requests, show them stars and their favorite constellations. And giving them a little space. One of the ways that I give space for astrology without sort of declaring anything about it is that I say, oh, well, astrology is a belief system, just like maybe a religion is, and that's your belief system. So I try to make sure that the girls feel comfortable that if they're coming with that belief system, but not give it anything more than that, because it's often a starting point of interest. So that is what we call the younger girl badges, our kindergarten through 5th grade. The older girl badges really change. So starting at cadet, the cadet badge, which is the next slide, is all about light, the electromagnetic spectrum, looking at visible light. So cadets are middle schoolers. They'll be wearing those khaki vests. If it's during the day or you're inside, you can play with the visible light spectrum, prisms. There's so much amazing research, especially the Harvard computers. The women who worked out of Harvard discovered about what we can know about stars from light. If you have any tales of scientists, this is a great time to bring it up because they're starting to think about, can I be a scientist? Is this for me? And the answer is yes. Women have been doing this for a long time and have done a lot of amazing research and made discoveries. Talking about light outside the visible spectrum, you can ask them about what kind of pictures they've seen of the universe. This is a chance to talk about those Hubble images, and that's a little dated for me, I realize now, but those, however you want to describe them, when you have colors assigned to certain wavelengths and how that may not be what you see in the telescope when you're looking at galaxies. Showing them colorful stars, sort of talking about different sort of star colors. There is the next 3 badges, all 3 of them have opportunities for astrophotography. So if you have someone in your club who loves astrophotography, this is the chance to encourage them to bring out their equipment, even if they're not comfortable having the girls get hands-on. If you narrate what you're doing while you're doing it, they'll learn so much. And maybe they have certain things, some of the badges even have certain activities the girls are supposed to do. Take a picture at 1 second, 5 seconds, 30 seconds. And so they'll have a chance to see what it is, even if they don't have their own equipment. This badge has information about conserving the dark skies, conserving night sky. That happens throughout the levels going forward. There's citizen science and talking about that. And middle school is really a time when a lot of people start to say, I am a science person or I am not a science person. Use the power of this informal learning experience. Take a moment and make sure that you're not quizzing them with all the older girls. You're not asking them about facts. I love that we were just talking about questions. Let them know that this is interesting. Try to increase their interest and confidence and focus on that. And then realize that they may not do well in tests, but maybe they're going to be amazing scientists. So this is a chance for you to kind of give them a much more positive experience than they may be experiencing in school. Or if they're already having a great time with science in school, getting a chance to dive deeper and ask you even deeper questions than their teachers may be comfortable with. And then our 2 older girl badges. Let's see where I'm at. I just love to talk about this stuff, and I've been talking a while. The senior badge for grades 9 and 10, which is for high schoolers. So they're now in high school. They're 14 to 16 years old, and this badge is definitely about the life cycle of stars, a lot about that, as well as some things about citizen science. So show them stars at different points in their life cycle, different stages. They may have done a Stardust self-portrait talking about what our universe is made of. So talking about elements. I mean, this is sort of a moment where you can get a little conceptual with what you're looking at and why our world is as it is. again, narrating. When you're using your telescope, if you're not comfortable with the girls getting hands-on, totally okay, but talking about what you're doing and how you're moving it and really letting them in on the sort of secret of how this works. We actually have girls starting in 6th grade who have joined astronomy clubs in their community. We've had quite a few coming to star parties that we have lately and realize that they may be kind of getting ready to get their own telescope and come participate. So, and I did see also a great suggestion about smartphones. If you have, they're a little hard to use, but sometimes you can get those telescope eyepiece holders for your phone, or just have one there and then share the photos afterwards. Yes, taking photographs, Pixar, it didn't happen. It's a thing. So giving them a chance to do that is great. Absolutely. And the senior badge starts talking about optics and candles. And then the last one, the ambassador badge. This is definitely more of an individual badge. Most of the girls, by the time they are ambassadors, some of them earn badges. Most of them are working on their gold award, which is not dissimilar from the Eagle Award, you might know. So a lot of them are very focused on community service. We even have some who do STEM outreach gold awards. So this is very much about NASA and knowledge, ways to share information with younger girls, understanding really the science of telescopes. And so talking about your experience as you have learned about astronomy, what has been challenging, what has been exciting. So that is the huge at you, which is what you should never do for girls, but that is the badges in 15.
And Michaela asked a great question about the Juliet program. Is that still active? I remember when I was a Girl Scout.
So I'm going to guess, Juliet, you might mean what was now called individually registered girls. So girls usually are in troops, but some girls are just Girl Scouts and earn badges on their own. So if that's the one that you're talking about, definitely. We still have girls, especially older girls. They may not be interested in the same badges as their troop. And so they will go ahead and earn a badge on their own. You don't always have to earn badges as troops. And we've actually had, I was talking to a girl who came to 2 cadet badge events in a row. We had 2 the last 2 Saturdays. She came to the one where she earned her night owl badge, which is a cadet badge, which is less about space science. It's a little more about senses after dark, but also has constellations. And then she came to our space science one the following week, and she said, oh, my troop wasn't interested, so we found this event. So they'll often come to events. So the badges are the same for the independently registered girls. I should also mention, many of you, if you've been in this world for long enough, will know the Senior Sky Badge, which is still around. This is for 9th and 10th graders. It's about constellations and NASA missions. It's great for outdoors. So some of the seniors may also be doing their Sky Badge. And I'll put some links in the chat. And there's so many questions I wanted to ask about what you did to keep younger girls active and what you do to make it girl-led, and I sort of don't want to take too much time, so that might be a discussion on the forum.
Thanks so much, Jessica.
Thank you.
It's so exciting that there's this whole series of space science badges now. So
it is, and I love how they're really they're engaging the girls in a very different way. It's not a list of like, find these 10 constellations. It's more about like, how does this impact your life? It's been a really cool experience to work with the Girl Scouts and see how they learn, and they're using these girl-led processes that really make a difference and make things so engaging. Yeah. So thanks. She put a badge step overview in the chat, and we will have all of these also on the
in the forum.
And then also I'll give you a link at the end that has all of these links in one place, so you don't have to write them all down. All right, I think that's me next. Is that
yes.
I'm going to talk a little bit about some extra things that you can keep in your toolkit just as you're doing star parties to think about. And many of you have a lot of experience with this, so I'm just going to run through it fairly quickly so we get to some questions. I have been giving star parties and participating in star parties for a decade and a half. And when I first started, there was a lot of, don't touch my telescope. And the people in my club have changed dramatically in the way they do that. So because it is kind of scary when someone walks up to the telescope and the first thing they want to do is grab onto the eyepiece because it looks like that's where you're going to put your eye. But to be kind of scolded right away is a hard thing to do. So do you guys have any ways that you address that in different ways than don't touch my scope? I've listed a couple of things here. Definitely, I usually now just bring my Dobsonian, that it doesn't matter if they tilt the whole thing over, we can just find it again. And I usually, if they're old enough, ask them if they'd like to find it. Usually the moon, if we're looking at that, see if they can find the moon so that they then learn how to use the telescope as opposed to hollering at them for touching the telescope. Binoculars, Don was saying earlier, are a really great way to engage them on their own so they have something to hold on to. Yeah, bringing something you can touch. Yeah. Michaela says, with the little kiddos, I just have them line up first so it keeps everything a little more organized and then have them step up one at a time. Absolutely. Yeah, so giving them maybe a list of things that you can choose from if there are a few planets up. What do you want to see first? Would you like to see Venus or Jupiter? So letting them have a little bit of say in what you're going to look at is kind of fun. Yeah, so hands-on learning is a fantastic experience and one of the quickest ways to learn, but it's not always possible with your telescope. I mean, I think that it's really important to note too that oftentimes we don't want them to touch our telescopes. And I'm going to get to that in just one second. If you go to the next slide, Anna, I think these kind of got out of order first. Yeah, Don said they want to see the mirror. Absolutely. Bob encourages them to help him align the object by sighting through the red dot finder. The red dot finder is a gem. I use that one all the time too. And then they each one teach one, so they pass it on to the next person and show the next person how to, so that they get to then be the teacher. I love that, Bob. Thanks. Yeah, the step stool for kids. We're going to talk about that for sure. Because maybe we'll just, I'll come, I think we're getting to the step stool part, or holding out your arm to let them grab onto it if they really need to hold on. Sometimes when I am out in the dark and I get disoriented a little bit, it's easy to feel like you're losing your balance. So giving them something to hold on to is a really nice thing. Yeah, we have a picture of that here. Thank you, Anna. This was a picture. Having a chair or a step stool or something that they can, giving them a place to put their hands when they're going to look at your telescope, that you don't want them to grab onto the eyepiece, because really you'll lose whatever you're looking at, and you don't always have time for that. So saying, here, put your hands right here and hold on so you feel secure, and then letting them and showing them where to put their eyes is a really nice way to go.
And that's formulating it in a positive way, that rather than saying, don't touch it, you're saying, hold on here.
Yeah, make them feel a little bit more secure about it, or hold on to your arm, like Carol said. Yeah, absolutely. And if you would go back to the, yeah, thanks, the hands-on activities. I'm going to give you a link in just a minute to the Night Sky Network. I believe we've had a couple of examples here of people who have put things into the chat about some activities like the pocket solar system where you show here, and that these are hands-on activities that give them something to do either before it gets dark or while they are out. Sometimes we have different kind of, you can go on a treasure hunt of the different kinds of things to see in the night sky and how they all relate to each other. It gives different ways for them to put things into context. Yeah, Michaela, it's cash register paper. That is a Brownie badge step too. It's a great one. It's a very easy to do one, and we have videos about it too. So once you see it once, you will not forget how to do it. Yeah, the worlds in comparison, Bob says. There's a bunch of really fun ones. The pocket solar system is really great because they can then take it home as well and share it with other people. It makes them, puts them in the position of an expert, which is a really lovely thing. Okay, so can we go to the next one? Just some other general outreach tips. This is a fellow who's doing outreach at we had a stadium. We have a big science festival every year here in San Francisco, and notice how he's down at their level. So if you're working with really young girls, sometimes all they see are your pockets. So you want to get down into where their eye level is and make sure that you can talk to them eye to eye. So especially when you're giving them instructions, like don't grab the eyepiece or put your hands here, it's really nice. They would love to see your eyes as opposed to, especially because often it's dark. or if you're very short, that's great too. But if you're not very short, go ahead and if you can, sit down on a chair or get down on your knees so that they can feel like you're on their level. Anybody have any ways that they engage girls who are waiting in line while they're waiting for the telescope? I'd love to hear. Oh yeah, Michaela, you make sure to wear clothes you're okay with getting dirty. Absolutely. Or have a seat, have a chair there. That's a good spot to do that as well. Yeah, have them draw, Michaela said, while they're waiting in line. Absolutely. Yeah. All right, we can go to the next one, and if you guys have ideas, asking, beginning questions about their experiences while someone else preps the scope. Yeah, because there's often times when you're looking for something, and like Anna was saying earlier, Jessica was saying earlier, narrating what you're doing is also really interesting often. So because they're curious, it's something they may have never used before, or they're wondering how the finder scope works versus the eyepiece and why you're using two different eyepieces, what look like two different eyepieces. Waiting in line, you can get a pair of eclipse glasses if you have the solar scope. I find that's a great one too, Carol. I agree. Being able to see the sun with the eclipse glasses before they see it close up really brings it to them in a very different way. Yeah, I agree. Yes, constellation storybooks, women in science picture books with a red lantern. Yeah, talk about dark adaptation. There are a lot of really great ways to engage there. Okay, this one, we have a stool. You'll notice she's got a cup of something in her hand. You will definitely encounter kids who have sticky hands, who are, there are many reasons why you might not want their hands on your telescope, and that giving them a way to, if you have things that you think about that you want before they come up to your telescope, it's good to give them just basic instructions about how we treat telescopes. It's a nice, easy way, like, hey, make sure your hands are clean. If they're not, don't worry, we'll save your spot. Come right back. Or put your cup down if you would before you come up here, because we don't want to get the telescope wet. So giving them simple instructions is a great idea, but do it trying to do it in a positive, encouraging way, as opposed to don't touch that telescope. The next one we went over, holding on to the ladder or a chair, giving them somewhere to hold their hands so that they feel a little more comfortable. So the next one, this is a really lovely one, and something that I try and do often. If you get there early, they are so interested in what you're doing. If they get there early, I should say, and letting them watch you set up, or if there's something that they can do, letting them help you set up. Like Dawn said earlier, giving them a chance to look in at the mirror is pretty fascinating, to see how these things work that they're not going to get to see once it gets dark in kind of the same ways. If there's someone who's got a lot of energy, it's really good to maybe need something very far away. That would be my kid. And you could need something that you possibly forgot, like a flashlight on the other side of the field. But giving them something to do is really an exciting part of making them feel welcome and like they are part of the experience of looking through the telescope. All right. This last piece, I just wanted to mention, so a lot of astronomy clubs, I've been working with astronomy clubs across the country for about 15 years. And when we first started working with astronomy clubs, there was this idea that observing through the telescope was the way you did amateur astronomy. That was what makes you an amateur astronomer. Well, it turns out that sharing that science is equally as important as doing the science. We bring up the example of Galileo, probably the most well-known astronomer, but he's most well-known because he made some amazing discoveries. But the reason that so many people knew about those discoveries is because he published them, because he told people about them. And he didn't publish them in Latin like all of the other scientists were doing at the time. A lot of them, a lot of the language of science was Latin. He published in Italian. He published in the language that people spoke on the street where he was from. And that gave such a wider audience to his ideas. So thinking about when you have the opportunity to be inclusive, it's not just for girls, it's not just Girl Scouts, but everybody. The more inclusive you can be, the more people we're going to bring to the science table, at least to feel comfortable with it. It's not that we need everyone to be a scientist, but we would love for everyone to be scientifically literate enough to read the New York Times or to read a paper and be interested and excited about that. Yeah, we wrote from New Haven, he also sent other people telescopes. Absolutely. Fabulous. Yeah, that's a really good point. So let's see. Oh, Jessica says step 5. This is really cool. Step 5 of every Girl Scout Space Science badge is about sharing. So it is asking the girls to share what they've learned with people that they know. Within the badges, you'll see there's a lot of examples of women who have made amazing contributions in science and can act as role models in that. So yeah, absolutely. So this is it. We saw last week, I believe, that it only takes one person and just a few minutes of sharing in a positive way to spark the interest of somebody that could change the direction of someone's life. Absolutely. So it doesn't take a whole lot. And I warn you that it might feel a little funny at first, because trying new things often feels a little funny. Taking that break, asking questions you might not normally answer, might not normally ask, or answering questions in a different way. It feels kind of funny, and it's a little hard sometimes to get the momentum to make that happen. But if we don't change the way that we're sharing this science, we're not going to change who's doing science. And it's really, really important that everybody is able to come to the table. I mean, we want girls to be able to discover their interests, but we also want women doing science, because the field of astronomy it benefits when more people are at the table. So I just want to take a moment and give you a charge, because I'm going to ask you to make one change. I want you to think about all of the stuff we've talked about over the last 3 weeks, all of the different perspectives we've seen on astronomy, and all of the women we've learned about who have done astronomy. I'll remind you with the next slide about our topics. Mm-hmm. These are some of the things. You go to the topics. Yeah, thanks. In the next slide, these are some of the things that we have gone over in the past 3 weeks. And I would love for you to think for a minute about one change that you feel like you can make. Just one. Doesn't have to be all of the things that you can make. And the next time you do outreach, just try it out. Try out something new and see how it goes. I would love for you to post your one change in the forum. So whatever it is you decide you'd like to do differently, just one small thing, if you could post that in the forum, and we'll put up a new
thread. I'll start it.
That's what you call it. Thanks, Anna. We'll put up a new thread asking you about your one change. So make sure to please post what you'd like to change, what you'd like to do a little bit differently in the forum. Would be amazing.
And you might make multiple changes, right?
Yeah.
You learned a lot of stuff during this workshop, but picking one to start with is a great way to go, and it might snowball from there.
And you can always come back to these slides.
And we want to ask you to post it in the forum, because we think you'll all benefit from seeing, and hopefully feel inspired by each other from seeing what you all plan to do.
Yeah. And so I encourage you to take what you're doing and share it with everybody. And thank you all so much for showing up to this. It's a really powerful statement. We had more than 90 people apply to take this workshop. We're so glad that you guys get to be the first ones to take it with us. And thank you so much for your interest. And we're going to be doing a lot more of these. So if you have club members or other friends who are interested in learning this, we'd love for them to come to one as well. just to keep making it more accessible for everybody. So for the I think we have two more slides. Yeah. You can find pretty much everything we've talked about at bit.ly/astroall. That is the easiest way to find all of these resources. If there's anything there that we've talked about in the last 3 weeks, if there's anything not there that we've talked about in the last 3 weeks, let me know. But I think that's pretty much everything. So if you go to that website, well, again, we'll post this in the forum. That's got a list of the things that we've talked about and a lot of the resources as well. And that's the Night Sky Network website, is where those live. And that's also where a lot of those hands-on activities, you can find them. You can search by topic, and so you'll find quite a bit of that there. So we want to support you all and ask what kind of resources you might like to see that we haven't covered here. Are there anything that your club could use that you'd like to share with them, that they might be interested in seeing, or your group that you're working with? If you have ideas about that, you can stick that in the chat. You can talk to us about it now. Oh my gosh, it's 7 o'clock. Oh, I'm so sorry.
And we want to ask that you fill out a brief
Yes.
survey. This one is slightly longer than the first two, but it should probably only take you about 5 minutes unless you get into a lot of details. We welcome that as well. And this will help us improve this workshop, bring you more useful resources to help you in this area. We will be sending you a thank you package as long as you've participated throughout the workshop, either attending these sessions or watching the recordings and posting in the forum. And then you definitely have to fill out the survey and post your one change. So if you do those things, you're going to get a thank you package.
And that includes the badges. So you'll get badge booklets for each of the 6 badges that are out there. So, and lots of other goodies from us. Yeah. So make sure.
Oh, the survey's not opening.
Uh-oh. Thank you. Appreciate that. Let's see what we can do about that. Okay. Try this one. Oh.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, hold on just 1 second.
It might be Viv who can take the survey. It might be internal.
Hold on just 1 second. I'm so glad you said that.
It's okay. I'm going to look back and see what questions we've gotten in the meantime.
Yeah, great.
Someone asked about how long the forum will remain active. That will be indefinite. So we're going to let you stay there, as long as we're running that site. We have plans to set up an alumni forum for people who have participated in this workshop, either in the online version like you just did, or the in-person version, which Teresa has run at some conferences. And we'll get you all together in one forum so that you can be exchanging ideas. So you're welcome to continue to post in the forum with this smaller cohort of folks you got to know, but look for, not quite sure on the timing yet, but hopefully before the end of the year, we'll be launching a forum that has folks who have participated in other versions of this workshop. Vivian's working on the permissions of the survey. Sorry about that. I also saw that Michaela asked about getting more involved with Girl Scouts in Northern California, and Jessica put her email in there. So you could reach out to her to find out more there.
Great, and I think the survey should be opening for everyone now. Sorry about that.
So try again with the survey. Here, I'll repost the link. And yeah, we went a little over this time, but I'm happy to stick around for a few extra minutes if anyone has any questions. But we also went over, so if you need to hop off, thanks so much for taking the time and showing the interest in doing outreach that will be more welcoming for girls, because it will be better for the field of astronomy to get more diverse voices.
Thanks, everybody. feel free to hop on. We can stop recording now.
Yeah.
And then you can say whatever you want.